Thank you for tuning in to Matters of the Heart Radio Live with your host, biblical counselor and author, Ms. Wendy. You can chat with us by clicking on the chat icon in your player to send us a message. Now, here's your host, Ms. Wendy.
We are so excited to have you joining us here on Matters of the Heart Radio Show today as we talk about love. You know, all of us were created with a deep need for love in our lives. None of us are exempt. We are created that way. God created us for himself. And we know that in the Word of God that we are told that God is love. And he fashioned us and he created us that we might have that longing for him. Not only for him, though, but also to be in deep, intimate relationships with others, whether it's a significant other that you share your time and your heart with, or those that are of family that we love so dearly, parents and siblings and grandparents, cousins, those that matter to us so much. And then we have our very dearest friends and those that are our chosen family to a certain regard, those that we share our heart with, though we were not born of the same family. You may not be able to tell because there's such a commitment and there's such a love there that through thick or thin, some say through hell or high water, they're there. So today is all about love in that regard, and it's also about our relationship with God and our love for him. So if you're not in a relationship and you're tempted to turn the dial because you're thinking, I don't want to hear all of this stuff about relationships, I'm not in a relationship, don't you dare touch that thing. we have some great stuff for you. This is for singles, marrieds, engaged, dating, wannabe dating, everyone that fits in that category. Because there is a love that we all have and there's a love that we all share that keeps us in common. And it's the love of Jesus. It's the love of God the Father. You know, in Revelation chapter 2, there's a verse that reads this way. Well, actually, I'm going to just kind of back up a little bit. This was in chapter 2, verse 1, to the angel of the church in Ephesus. Right. These are the words of him who holds the 7 stars in his right hand and walks among the 7 golden lampstands. We know that they're talking about the Lord Jesus. And he says, I know your deeds, your hard work, and your perseverance. We all want to be known that way, right? We all want for the Lord to remember our deeds, our hard work, our perseverance. And I know that you cannot tolerate wicked men, that you have tested those who claim to be apostles but are not, and have found them false. So we know he's talking to someone who's very dedicated and serious in their walk with him. Verse 3, you have persevered and have endured hardships for my name and have not grown weary. I'm thinking this is a pretty stellar call here, and so many of us would strive for that. But let's look at verse 4. He says, yet I hold this against you. You have forsaken your first love. Wow, what a terrible thing, in my opinion, to hear that after you have lived a lifetime of serving God. So he's talking about the works. You've persevered. I see your deeds. You've done well in the works department. But where your heart is concerned, I hold this against you. You've left your first love. He's talking about himself. Well, joining me on the show today is my super wonderful friend and the producer, Christine. Christine, welcome to the show.
Ta-da! Hello.
Thank you for keeping me straight here and making it sound good.
It's my privilege.
So, Christine, you heard me read the scripture from Revelations, and he says, the thing that I hold against you is that you've left or you've forsaken your first love. I kind of want to pick your brain a little bit. What are your thoughts on that? He's talking about serious Christians. He's not talking about fair weather people. He's talking about people who've really lived their life dedicated to him. He's talking about their works and their perseverance. But he's saying, but you've left your first love. You've left me.
2 things come to mind with that. One is that I think that in my life, at least, it's a constant circle of kind of leaving and coming back, where my relationship with him may falter at times because I'm not a perfect Christian yet and not being committed to him the way that I should be, or not putting him first or prioritizing him in my life and my decisions. The second thought that comes to mind are the Christians or the people that really the letter of Rome is addressed to, in what Paul's talking about with being Jewish and keeping the law, and they really did good, and like Paul says, I was a Pharisee and I kept the law and I did everything.
Yeah, he's saying if anyone has a right to brag, it's me.
Yeah. But at the same time, in the chastisement that comes out of all of that from Paul is that the things that they did were not out of the love of God. They did it because they considered the works themselves to be an attainment to righteousness, but there was no love of God in it. And the two thoughts that come to my mind about Christians is either one or the other, the cycling in and out of a relationship with God, or the you're doing it because that's what Christians are supposed to do, but you don't know, you haven't put God first. That's not out of love of God.
It's a hard issue.
Yeah,
it's a hard issue. Oftentimes I think too, as I think about this and I think about the work that's in front of me, we all have a call, and I believe that we want to be faithful to the call, and there's a great highlight in the time that we live in to be faithful and to lay down your life. But sometimes your heart can become heavy and it may feel cumbersome. The work can feel cumbersome, but that's never been the desire of the Lord. He said to learn from him that his yoke was easy and his burden was light. And I think when you peel back the work and the doing, I think really what he's saying is keep it simple. Because the simplest of love is usually the most enjoyable, where you're not having to work. I got to work to keep you happy. I've got to work to keep you quiet. I've got to work to, but it's just, you're just together and it's simple and you enjoy each other's company. And it's not this great big undertaking of work. And he's saying, yeah, those things are good. But what about your love for me? What about that pulling away? And it can be easy to lose our focus in working for the Lord and serving him in our local church or parachurch ministry or whatever we may be doing, and completely have that light fade to where we don't really have that sense of, I'm so in love with you, Lord. I love your presence. I love your peace. I love you.
I think the way that I've described it before is in a marriage, it's the relationship that you have in love with the Lord is sort of the same in marriage, and the way that I parallel that is when you're in a marriage and the honeymoon phase wears off, and then you are having to work to keep the house up, or you're having to work, especially when you have kids, and hey, I need to go after work, I need to pick so-and-so up because they've got to go to soccer practice, I need you to do this and this, and we need to get the sink fixed, and it's not fun, it's not romantic, it's not this idealized life, and you begin, I think, to get burdened down with that idea of where in marriage is this supposed to be something that I feel good about and I get benefit emotionally from. And I think work with God is very much the same way, especially like you said, when he gives you that calling and you start, oh man, I'm so excited because this is a calling, it's a ministry, that's great. But then when you get bogged down in the details of it and you meet that resistance because the world doesn't belong, to where the world is against us, and when it starts coming up against us and we get that resistance, and we know God's with us because he called us to it and he'll bring us through it, but it's not fun, and you just get bogged down in it. And I think, to me, that's where I tend to lose sight of it too. It's like, I know God called me to this, but man, this isn't fun, and I'm really not enjoying this, and I'm meeting resistance, and I just kind of lose that love, or that, just like in a marriage, you stop focusing on the love of spouse and just seeing that spouse in that. That's one of the ideas that comes to me about that, and the difficulty of being persistent but also being mindful of your spouse.
Definitely. Well, we know that the Lord wants us to keep our hearts tender toward him, and sometimes we can get so bogged down that really we end up spending more time working for him than spending time with him. And that is, to me, the biggest trap, that we get so caught up in the doing and we begin to forsake the being, kind of like the story of Mary and Martha. Martha was forsaking the being, but oftentimes, I'm a doer. I've thought, hey, somebody had to cook the food. I'm feeling for Martha here. I'm thinking, yeah, all of these people are coming to my house. Who's supposed to help me cook? Is it just going to poof appear on the table? But then I think about the water and the wine. Hey, it could have poof appeared on the table. And I look at Mary, and he's saying, but she's chosen the most important thing, or the best thing. And where is Mary? She is sitting at his feet. And, it's just the being and the doing. It's a balance of both, really. And I agree that it is our relationship with our significant other in a romantic relationship can parallel that of our walk with the Lord. There are a lot of similarities, and I'm going to begin pointing that out and talking about how we will benefit as an individual, whether you are single, married, in a relationship, not, divorced, all of these great things. We can all benefit by growing in our love life, our love walk with the Lord and with others. So you may be single, but that just because you're single does not mean you do not have love in your life, or that God has not called you to love people in your life. And you may be married and you're listening. We're glad that you are, or in a relationship. And I'm going to begin to highlight some really good ways that you can keep the love tight. So as a marriage counselor, I see people so many days a week, session after session, hour after hour, and I'm talking about how to win the heart of your lover or win the heart of your significant other. Oftentimes we can say, I know I have them, I know we live under the same roof, or I know that there's a ring on my finger, or I know that we're committed to each other, but do you have their heart? That's really where the trap is, and where relationships go south, is when you begin to stop fighting. And by fighting, I mean really working, really putting the effort into winning their heart or keeping it won. That kind of may not make sense, but let me continue on and you may understand what I'm trying to say. Oftentimes people can be taken for granted. And the longer you're in a relationship with someone, you can just take it for granted that they are the one that makes the coffee every morning, because that's just how it is. And that's fine and dandy until that's their job and there's no appreciation for it and there's never a thank you. And we may say likewise in our walk with the Lord, well, the sun's going to come up and I'm going to live. But how often are we really grateful for the blessings of life that we can breathe, that we can see? Being very complacent in our relationships is dangerous because you begin to take each other for granted. And it's often one of the greatest regrets that I hear from people when they're going through a breakup or a divorce is that then they begin to realize just how much they took the other person's love for granted, or the simple or sweet things that they would do for granted. But oh, how wise we would be to begin to really awaken ourselves, because we are each responsible for ourselves, awaken ourselves from a sleepiness that would say, oh, it's okay, they owe it to me. The truth is that no one owes you anything. They choose to love you. Love is a choice.
I think that that's something that too many people these days tend to misidentify, in that their concept of love is that it's a feeling, and the concept of love really falls under the definition of a noun. And love is what you do. It's an action.
It's a verb.
It's a noun. It's a thing. It's not so much, oh, well, I feel it today and I don't feel it tomorrow, because, in the same regard with God, I don't feel anything out of church. I didn't get anything out of the service. I didn't feel that energy. Or I think in the same thing in relationships. Well, I didn't feel like being nice, or I didn't feel like doing this for them, or I didn't feel like it. It has nothing to do with your feelings.
And it's really, although I'm not a big proponent of the saying "suck it up," it kind of is that way in times like this, because it's really about a choice. It's a verb. It's an action. It's a decision to love them. It's a decision to say, honey, thank you for making me that coffee in the morning, again, probably for the 20,000th time. But hey, you know what? You're faithful every morning to make me that coffee, and I love that about you. Or you're faithful to make sure that we have towels when we get out of the shower that are clean and folded, or socks, or taking care of the children or the house. And it may be someone who's dating, and it's just, thanks for texting me in the morning and wishing me a good day. And those sweet things where you don't have to, but all too easily can be taken for granted. Because take a couple that breaks up. That's one of the things that I hear the most of, is I miss just having that someone to say good morning. I'm thinking about you. Have a good day. Or asking later, how has your day gone? Because we all have a desire to feel loved and wanted and needed. I think the number one best secret to success in any relationship, whether it be with the Lord, with friends, parents, family, or a lover, is to be intentional. Being intentional is truly, it's a fix-all. You can intentionally love, and that's kind of what you were saying earlier, Christine, to your point. You can choose to intentionally love regardless of whether or not you feel it. You can intentionally be kind. You can intentionally do good. And you can intentionally spend time with the Lord. Oftentimes people talk about not feeling the presence of God in church. And I just wonder, were you worshiping God with all of your heart? Or were you so focused on receiving that you didn't really pay too much attention on giving? You're there to worship Him and to give unto Him. And there has to be a mutual sense of giving and taking in all healthy relationships. And so today is a little bit of a wake-up call in the show, but it's also an encouragement that getting lazy will rob and kill your relationship. And so let today spur you on to an even greater level of intimacy in your walk with the Lord, in your relationship, by being intentional, by changing things up, because sometimes the monotony and the routine will kill a relationship just as much. Yes, it's great to have your favorites, and it's great to know specific intricacies that your special someone likes. But I know for me, depending on the person that you're with and the personality that they carry, if it's the same thing over and over, I'm going to be so bored. And after a while, I'm just not going to be happy, because that is who I am. I can't stand the same old, same old. I do like an element of routine, but the same place for dinner every Friday night, I'm just not thinking so.
Wow, yes. Even in the friendship, that's not so much the... Everybody's got their differences and their gifts, whereas me, I'm just completely the opposite, which is what makes our friendship so amusing.
Yeah.
I think the other thing that comes to mind too is what is it that you do, or do you start putting up those walls of resentment when the things that are done out of love gestures to you are maybe done incorrectly? It's not something somebody had to do for you, but they're doing it, like making the coffee in the morning. So you start taking for granted that you're going to get the coffee in the morning, and then this resentment builds up if maybe they didn't do it that morning, or it was burned, or it didn't taste good. And where is that level of, I'm standing on what you start feeling like is your right to receive in a relationship, as opposed to a gift that you were given that maybe just didn't go the right way.
Yeah, again, it's kind of like a shaking the finger, tisk tisk, because truly, that's kind of a sense of entitlement. You owe me. But the truth is no one owes you. And when people go through a divorce and breakups, that's when it really tends to hit them really hard that, you know what, they didn't. Why didn't I say thank you more? The truth is you should say thank you every morning to your honey if they make you coffee and bring it by your bedside, and be, thank you, Is it really going to hurt to say thank you? No. But really, will it make a difference? Yes.
Where's the putting that in that broader perspective with God, the beautiful point of going to church, and people often, the complaint is, I'm not being fed, or I didn't get anything out of that. And truly, it's, you are supposed to give something in that too. You're supposed to give.
Absolutely, because it's worship, and the worship of doing and being. And it doesn't mean you're not going to get distracted or have a hard time concentrating if you have a lot on your mind. But I think sometimes we have to be reminded, and we need a little bit of a good, firm reminder that it's not about being entertained at church. It's about worshiping. It's about pouring out our love on the Lord, and not so much about being entertained. And, we find it easy to give an hour to our favorite show, or an hour a day to social media, or an extra hour to sleeping. But even me, because fortunately, my church can we stream it, and we can visit church live from our bed if we're not feeling well, which has come in really handy for the single mom at different times. But it can also become a tool of laziness, because I can lose that discipline sometimes for getting up, getting all four of them up and saying, come on, we're going to go to church. wake up, get up. But really, what does that say? I think that's reflective of our hearts. It's a heart check. Where is my heart? Are you an inconvenience to me now? I think it's a really good heart check.
Well, it hits on the second thing that I was really thinking that you touched on with couples and relationships, where we're talking about that expectation of standing on rights. Well, that expectation wasn't met, and in the same note and in the same vein, what do you do when that happens with God? Where that you were I am expecting these blessings from God, but it doesn't always, just like a good parent, He doesn't always just give you the goods without the discipline that goes with it. So then that expectation, or you feel like it's almost like going to Job, where Job was like, "Hey, how dare you do this?" And God said, "Now wait a minute." And
where were you when I formed the skies? Where's the snow being stored? Where were you when the foundations were laid?
And there's we don't have rights to stand on per se with God, but that expectation of blessing and abundance that God gives and pours out on us, sometimes we feel like that's not met, and it puts up a wall of resentment with God, and then you lose that.
I really think that can bring a lot of disillusionment when our mind and our focus is only on the characteristic of Him being a good God and a loving God. He is, but that also does not take away from Him being a holy God. Sometimes, I was thinking about this yesterday in church as well, because of something that my pastor said. We can invent and create a Jesus that's comfortable for us, rather than really worshiping the Jesus of the Bible, who says to forgive. But then some of us don't like being told to forgive, but we say we follow Jesus. Well, which Jesus are we talking about? The Jesus of the Bible, or the Jesus that's comfortable for us? When He said that He tithes His money, which Jesus are we following? It's so easy to really only focus on that and take away the aspect of holiness and justice that He brings, and really turn our focus to what can you do for me, rather than how can I lay down my life for you. Yesterday I was doing a show for the international stations, Christine, and I was reading from John chapter 11, I think it is, when Lazarus had died. And Mary and Martha were devastated. And Jesus knew that he was sick, and He knew that He was going to raise him from the dead, but He didn't go to them immediately. But the Bible tells us that, and it says specifically in there, Jesus loved Mary and Martha and Lazarus. And sometimes we think, well, just because Jesus loves me, He's going to show up when I snap my fingers as soon as I ask. But I love this about that story is He loved them, and He says in there that He loved them. But notice that He didn't show up immediately, because He had another plan and another purpose. And sometimes we take that delay in our answer to prayer or our request of Him to mean no. And it doesn't always mean no. It may mean not that way or not yet. But delay doesn't necessarily mean no. But He is not our genie in a bottle that He jumps or gives us those 3 wishes when we rub on the lamp. That is so contrary to His word. He listens to our heart. He knows our heart. But to think that He Himself wants to be in an unhealthy relationship where He's the giver and we're the taker all the time, I think we set up ourselves for a lot of discouragement. And many people fall away because that's the only understanding that they have, that Jesus is going to bless them, that God loves them. It's the only understanding. I'm not saying that that's a bad understanding, because I believe that it's true. But when you think that being a Christian means that you're not going to suffer, that you're not going to have hardship, you really begin to get a disillusioned vision of what your walk in following Christ is going to be like. So many martyrs that have gone before have given up their life for the furtherance of the gospel. So many live in a missionary position, and they forsake everything out of their love for Him. Am I going to say that they're out of the will of God, or they're not serving God because they're hungry, because they're sharing their food with the poor? No way. It's just part of the Christian walk, and everyone has a different thing to experience in their Christian walk. And in those difficulties, God uses it like a refiner's fire to even show us where our faith is really at. Is it in ourselves? Is it in believing only good comes from Him? You referenced Job earlier, and one line, when I had a baby that died many years ago, whenever I put the announcement out for the passing of the child, I quoted Job in the announcement, as he said, "The Lord giveth, and the Lord taketh away, but blessed be the name of the Lord." It's such a great point of maturity when it's not so much that we bless the name of the Lord when he gives, but we can also bless the name of the Lord when he taketh away.
Yeah, there's a contemporary song out that the main lyric is, "I will praise you in the storm."
Yeah, I love that song. Yeah.
I do too, and it's hard to do. I think in broadening that, not just from God, but just into your everyday relationships, into your marriages, into your friendships. And I think so many times we go into an idolized version or belief about the marriage especially, or a relationship especially, or even in chosen families or friendships, where you just think, man, this is going to work out, this is going to be great, and you have that expectation and all that. But when it comes down to it, and all of the butterflies and all the pretty things are kind of stripped down, and you get down to the raw and the gritty, what I think you look at the marriages that really came out of the greatest generation around World War II, and just see that, man, they went through it. They went through depression. They went through their spouse being overseas. They brought up their children. Yeah, and you see, and it wasn't pretty. That was not romantic, and that was not fun.
But it sure did pull them together, and you see that, and I think that you see that in relationships as well. And the ones that stand the test of time are the ones who really dig their heels in, and they say, again, hell or high water, I am committed to you. I will stick it out, and I will live life with you. Now, I'm not saying stay in relationships that are abusive or anything like that are very toxic, but not every relationship is like that, and it's really more about convenience. And we want to live a life that is committed to the Lord first, not forsaking our first love, like I said at the beginning of the show, but also walking out that same love life that we have with the Lord, with those significant people that we hold dear in our lives, letting it mirror and be a reflection of the love that we have with God. And I hold on. I'm holding on for the ride. I'm holding on through sickness and in health. I'm holding on for better or for worse. It's such a beautiful picture of love. It's great to set goals together as a couple, to dream together. God has a dream for us. He dreams with us, and he even reveals his dreams for us in giving us, the Word of God tells us he works in us both to will and to do for his good pleasure. And oftentimes people wonder, is this of me or is this of God? It's both, especially when you're walking in harmony, in sync with the Spirit, as God begins to birth things and deposit his seed in you for what he's destined for you to do in your life. Being intentional in our relationships and showing that love is so key and foundational to maintaining a good, healthy love life with the Lord and with those around us. Let's take a commercial break.
Are you suffering from a past hurt? Lingering pains can inhibit your potential to be all that God has in store for you in your life. As a biblical counselor, Miss Wendy has written Healing Waters, a 21-day workbook which offers well-thought-out steps to emotional recovery. Making use of hands-on activities, prayers, and meditation on Scripture, Miss Wendy helps build faith and develop patterns that establish lifelong vitality. Why not take that step to the healthy, whole, God-filled individual you're meant to be? Go to mattersoftheheartradio.org to order your copy today. That's mattersoftheheartradio.org. You're listening to Matters of the Heart Radio with your host, Miss Wendy. We'd love to hear from you today. You can chat with us by clicking on the chat icon in the player located on mattersoftheheartradio.org, or you can also reach out to us on our Facebook page at Matters of the Heart Radio. Now, here's your host, Miss Wendy.
Well, if you're just tuning in, I hope that you caught the first half of this show. I'm talking about love. I'm talking about love in a twofold way. One is our love for God and not forsaking our first love. And the other is how we can maintain good, healthy love relationships in our life, whether it's with a significant other or in friendships or family relationships. These tips that I'm giving you as a counselor and as your friend are essential for maintaining good, healthy relationships all the way around. Love never, ever, ever fails. When you're stuck in a hard place and you're wondering, what do I do? One thing I often give counsel on when you're really stuck is, what would love do here? What would love look like here? You will never go wrong. It doesn't mean that someone's going to reciprocate it perfectly, but you're not responsible for them. You're responsible for yourself. And it's always a great question to ask yourself, how would love respond here? What would love do here? What would love look like here? We're told that the world will know us by our love for each other. And like I said, it's just something you can't go wrong with. So I'm going to continue talking about great ways to maintain a healthy love life, love walk with the Lord, and relationships with your family and friends. We've talked about being intentional. Things do not just happen on their own. Poof, it happens. It may feel like that at the very beginning when it's warm and fuzzy, but after a while it takes work. And that's true for anyone and everyone. It may not feel very hard, but there will definitely be hard times that you will encounter. If you are in a relationship that withstands any test of time, if you're going to be in a relationship for 3, 4, 5, 10, 20, 30 years plus, rest assured your relationship is going to go through the fire. It's going to go through some testing, because we grow as people, but we don't always grow at the same rate or the same direction. But maintaining that connection is key. So let's continue on. I was talking about setting goals. You know, one thing that is really important in the longevity of relationships, especially in romantic relationships and marriages, is that you have goals that you set. You have dreams. That could look like scheduling vacations. It could look like repairs at home. There are just projects, things that you enjoy. If you love camping, setting an agenda for the different places you want to go camping at. But keeping the future in mind and working towards something together is really key for a healthy, long-lasting relationship, because you get to the point in every relationship to where you don't have the children as the center of your attention anymore to talk about. Or you may not have your career anymore, whether it's because you've taken ill and you're no longer working, or a child has passed away, or just because of age and time. But there has to be more to your relationships than romantic relationships, or what I'm talking about now, than just your work and the children, or it will not sustain a joyful time. It will become cumbersome. You'll become bored, disinterested, and oftentimes that leads to an affair. So there's a good little piece for you. But also in our walk with the Lord, sometimes if we think that reading the New Testament alone is going to be good enough in our walk and sustain us, no. God's also given us an Old Testament. He's giving us worship. He's told us to make songs and to sing songs and hymns and spiritual songs and to encourage each other. There are different ways to worship God. We can worship God by the work of our hands. We can worship with our singing, with our talking, by helping people, by our work, by studying, by remaining silent. There are so many different spiritual disciplines we can do. And it's important that we don't get into a rut as well by sticking with the same Bible reading pattern, not picking up other books to help us grow. We want to set goals. We want to dream with God and really often encounter Him and ask Him, Lord, what did you create me for? Why is there breath in my lungs? What a sad thing for God to give us our life and to think that He gave it to us without cause or without purpose. That's simply not true. Just like He told Jeremiah, I formed you in your mother's womb. I knit you together. And He had a purpose. He had a call on him as a prophet. Even from an early age, it was revealed to Jeremiah, though he doubted it. He said, well, how me? I'm young. What are you talking about? Age has nothing to do with it. Look at Moses, 80-something. He could say, God, but how? I'm 80. Age has nothing to do with it. We all have a call and a purpose. And God expects us and wants us and longs for us to clasp our hand with His and journey on to discover all of the great things that he has for us.
I think one of the things that I heard recently was when you get to heaven, God will say, what did you do with the gifts that I gave you? Mm-hmm. What did you do with the life that I gave you? Mm-hmm. One of the examples that I thought of when you were talking about Moses and Jeremiah was even in the New Testament with Mary, when the angel told her, you will have a child, and he will be called the Most High. I mean, you're talking about the Savior, and she just... It's hard for her to understand it. Like,
yes,
how
to conceive. How
am I going to conceive? I don't know a man, and all that. But it's what seems like it's impossible for God through her faithfulness and saying yes. And what came of that, where she could have said no, but the beautiful thing that came out of it, and the gift that was given in response to that. And I think you do have so many good gifts. Mm-hmm.
And sometimes, Christine, I don't mean to cut you off there, is some people think that if they're not in front of a lot of people, or they're not doing a radio show, a TV show, holding conferences, their gifts don't matter, but it has nothing to do with that. Sometimes the gift is of mercy. Sometimes it's someone who's a volunteer at a hospital that may be the only visitor that someone may have in their hospital room the entire day or the entire week. Some gifts are more public and some are more private, but none of them are irrelevant.
There's a priest that was down, I believe, in South America. His name is Jose Maria Escriva, and he founded the order called Opus Dei. But his main goal was that your everyday simple gestures, that your work, in ordinary work, it's nothing extravagant. It's sweeping the floor. Therese of Lisieux, same thing. I sweep the floor for love of God, and it's just the most ordinary things can become holy things just by your actions, and you're living your life for God, even in the most, even if nobody sees them. And I think that living your life with intention, like you said, gives a purpose to what you do, even though you're quote unquote just a housewife. When you do all the little things and acknowledge it, when you're acknowledging Him in every little thing that you do like that, it can't help but show in who you are. You in your life, I think the world is tired of Christians saying, well, being sanctimonious or talking about being holy, but when we act it out, and even in our ordinary things, I think that it shows, because of the way you behave and the way that you do what you do in your life with holiness.
Sure. And it's not about the crowd looking at you. For goodness sake, it doesn't have anything to do with that. It has everything to do with you pouring out your love on Jesus. You know, that's something I tell I have some moms that come in here that are young, and they're bombarded. They're having a hard time. They have these little ones at home, but every snack, every little bowl of Cheerios that you pour, every bath that you give, all in service to the Lord, not one thing is wasted. Not one thing is wasted. And of course, teaching your children about Jesus. Let me continue on here with my list. Talking and actively listening. Oh, I love this, actively listening, because I have so many couples that come in who say, I talk to him and he doesn't hear me, or I keep having to repeat myself to him over and over and over. Being an active listener is so key. But again, not just in your friendship, romantic relationship, but also our relationship with the Lord, because we don't want to be one-sided in our relationship where we just talk to God, and we never take the time to just be quiet and to listen. I think truly so many hearts would be healed if they just practiced that one discipline of allowing themselves to be quiet before God. They may have a hard time believing His loving words when He says, I love you, and doubt, was that you or was that me? It was Him. If it sounds like something He would say, would He say, does it line up with His word? Sure. God is love, and He says that He loves us. Why wouldn't it be Him? You know, I know sometimes if we're not used to hearing those things in life, it can feel far-fetched to think that we could hear those things in our quiet time with the Lord, but you absolutely can. So talk. And past just how was work? Fine. You want to watch TV? Sure. You want spaghetti for dinner? Yeah. Past that, how are you? Did it bother you when your boss told you that today? How can I pray for you? Praying together about whatever's going on in life is one of the most intimate and precious things you'll ever hold with anyone of great significance to you. And those relationships, can they go south? Sure. More than likely, not. Not if you are truly humbly walking before the Lord, serving each other, and incorporating that spiritual intimacy with each other. You're less likely because you both hold a holy and reverential fear for the Lord and what you've brought into His presence.
What would you say in that importance? You talk about praying for each other and such. I mean, how much more impactful or impacted is the marriage when you have couples that do say, the husband says, I'm going to pray for you, and the wife says, let me pray for you, and they pray for their spouse, and they invite God, where you see that everyday change of them incorporating God into all that they're doing, and especially in their strengthening one another by praying for each other and blessing their children every night and things like, and praying as a family where everybody just stops and comes together, and you make that such a habit of praying with your family, praying with your kids, and all of you coming together to pray for each other. It seems like it would undergird, and strengthen all the obstacles that you come with.
Sure, because you feel united and you're both going it with the same faith in common in God. And to know that where you may be weary or tired, that your honey has your back, and they are before the throne of God on your behalf. And even if it's not your honey, if it's your children or your parents, I can think of times when my mom has said, I know that you have such and such going on. I was praying for you all night long. Wow, that means everything to me. My children will say, as long as you're praying, Mom, I know that everything is going to be okay. So it could be our honey, it could be our parent, it could be our children, it could be anyone of great significance, but how much more confidence do you take when they do in who they are as a person, and how much they value your faith in God as well. So be an active listener, go deep, go past things on the surface, talk about your feelings. I know men can get uncomfortable with that, but I think that's really the gift of having a woman in your life in an intimate relationship, because she can help pull out those places that maybe have been reserved in your life or you were taught to be reserved about. But women are so good at talking about their emotions. It's a gift to a man to be able to do that. Just like on the flip side, it is a gift to us as women when our honeys are like, you know what, let it go. It's okay. It's not, not that big of a deal, to help us find that balance. God created us so intricately, knowing that balance that we needed. And I really can respect and love that.
That's what the beautiful part to me, and going back, like you said, and knowing the Old Testament, and the beautiful part of the second creation story in Genesis 2, where God brings all of the animals to Adam, but He says, you need a suitable companion for you. Yeah. And makes Eve flesh of my flesh, bone of my bone. And it's something that's so beautiful to me, because it's not, yes, you're both equal, but you're both different, and you complement each other by being different. And what he can give to you and what you can give to him, as a woman or as a man, your partner who it's a strength the other by nature doesn't necessarily inhabit.
And I say that to couples all the time. Women are very discerning. Men are not quite as discerning typically. Women they can't tell you exactly why or how they know. A lot of people call it a woman's intuition. But rest assured, if Mom says, or your honey on the feminine side says, I don't feel good about that, I don't think we should do it, I would put my chips on that square and I would not do it. And then on the flip side, if your honey in the masculine respect, whether it's your honey or your dad says, that doesn't really make sense. I think it would be better if you went about it this way, because they've methodically thought it through, bringing both together, or she may say, I think this is a right decision. I just don't know how. And he comes in and he says, oh, I know how. I know how to fix it. There's a good man for you. They can both complement each other really well. And appreciating the differences is really where it's at, because it's those differences that sometimes tend to grate on people's nerves. They think, I just can't stand this. He doesn't ever talk about his emotions, or she's all about emotion and not about logic. But you know what? Why does it have to be one way or the other? It doesn't have to be. It can be both and that's really where you find the harmony, when you stop despising the differences and you begin to embrace them and accept them as a blessing from God. Okay, so another thing I'm going to say is go out on dates. There should not be a week that goes by that you do not have a set aside time when you go out on a date with your honey. It doesn't have to be a long time, but it doesn't need to be without children if possible. I'm going to say switch it up, go to new places, try new things. There's something that I tell all of my couples. I'm not going to I guess I shouldn't endorse any particular company, but there are different apps, I'll say, or different people who have discounted tickets to a variety of activities that you can search out. I love doing that because maybe I didn't know before that there was skydiving here in Dallas indoors, or a show that's going to be playing I didn't know anything about, but I can get tickets at a good price, and it makes it going on dates affordable if that's an issue, and it helps to bring variety. And not having your children with you is key. Now, I think that sometimes this can be hard for moms, especially if the children are young. But it's healthy and it's good and it's very beneficial for the relationship if you have a trusted babysitter, if you have someone that you can rely on. I know not all couples do, and if you don't, there are great ways to have dates at home. As a matter of fact, I have all of my couples come up with at least 5 inside dates and 5 outside dates that they love, and switch the list with their partner, because sometimes going on a date is either not affordable or the kids are sick, there's not a sitter or something, but there are great things you can do at home besides watching a movie. Rarely do I say a movie is an acceptable date idea. I usually say no. Why? Because you're not interacting with each other. You can sit in front of the TV on a couch, but what good does that do you if you do not feel more connected to the person that you're sitting with when you're finished than when you began? But you can play games together, get cooking books together, you can cook together, you can do projects together, you can read reading books together is a wonderful thing. If you can find a good, clean romance novel, I really highlight that a lot to couples to take turns reading and just talking and sharing and delving into that world together. But having a variety is really the key. And it's not that we don't love our children, that we don't take them on dates, but our children cannot be the only part of our world. And they need to see that good, healthy relationship balance for themselves, so that when they find themselves in a marriage or in a significant relationship, that they already have an understanding that it's okay to leave the kids behind and to go connect and to talk and relax and really spur each other on without the distraction of, here, let me do this, and I need my shoe tied, and someone's throwing a fit, or they want. And likewise with the Lord. You may think that sounds silly, but I think it's actually very healthy and very wonderful. He is our first love. Set a date aside for him, a time where you just turn off the ringer on your phone, close the door to your room, no one can come in. Go for a walk. That's one of the things I love to do, is just walk and pray and talk with the Lord, just as if he were right there beside me, and share that intimate time with him where no one else is invited. And especially if you're married, because sometimes a detriment or a big problem can be that we can let our spouse take the place of God where intimacy is concerned. And that is dangerous, because what ends up happening is we end up making an idol of our spouse. And should anything happen to them or the relationship, we are so lost, and God almost feels like a stranger, that it will rob us, and it will take a long time to heal from it. Okay, so go on dates. Okay, and so for those of you that are married, and I'm only saying married, I'm going to say, cover your ears, keep your sex life alive. Keep it healthy and keep it active. Oftentimes people ask, well, how much is too much and how much is not enough? Well, the golden rule in counseling is a 72-hour rule. So I encourage all of my couples not to go more than 72 hours without having that good, wonderful time together. unless it's some kind of medical something, whatever. I'm tired is a lousy excuse. I don't accept that excuse in my office, and you shouldn't accept it in your home. You need that time together to bond and to connect and to share, to laugh, to feel loved, and that keeps things healthy. All right, you can uncover your child's ears. I won't go into a lot of detail, not on this show. Discover each other's love language. Oftentimes we're busy showing the person that we love them by the way that we receive and we interpret love. And my favorite way of highlighting this is usually I have a touchy-feely person engaged and married to someone who's not so touchy-feely. And the touchy-feely wants to touch and sit close and just have some kind of connection. And the one who isn't is thinking, you are getting on my last nerve with this. Can you just sit on your own couch? And the touchy-feely person's like, no, I just want to be with you. Well, sometimes they get a bad rap. People think it has to be all hugs and kisses, but usually just a hand on the leg or just sitting side by side. It's important that we love the person that we're with intimately in a way that they receive love, not the way that we feel the most comfortable giving it or the way that we want to give it, but in the way that they need it and the way that they receive it.
I think that can go as a two-way street, being not the lovey, touchy, feely type myself. And my expression of love or my love language may come off as a bit more technical or a bit more of a doer. That's the love language. Let me do this for you and take care of this for you, because that's my expression of love. I think that definitely goes both ways in recognizing the strength that another person has, and I think there's definitely got to be a compromise in that too, and understanding that. I think all of that's really important. But I think it seems to me like the problem would be that you just don't bring it up, or you just don't discuss it, and just think it'll just iron itself out,
and it doesn't.
We'll both figure out what the compromise is without saying,
without talking about it. And that's a good one. You're exactly right. We have to talk about it, because I am a more touchy-feely person. So if I'm not touched, I'm going to be like, you don't love me anymore. I saw you and you didn't give me a hug, or, that's going to make me feel, but give me a hug. I'm good. If you're not hugging me, we have problems. And we must be fighting. Something must be wrong. But that is my makeup, and that is who I am. And you know what? Even with our children, and it doesn't even have to be necessarily with a romantic person in a romantic relationship, but even with our children, knowing and understanding their differences. I'm going to recommend 2 different books here, actually. One is The 5 Love Languages. Many, many people are familiar with it. I think it's great. It's a great place to begin. But I would say Intimate Encounters is a fantastic book. I really reference it a lot in my practice. Intimate Encounters is a wonderful, wonderful book because it's kind of like, in my opinion, this is just Wendy's opinion, it breaks down the 5 love languages into a more refined search, and it helps you to hit the bullseye in how to best love the people in your life, whether it's your children or your spouse, your parents, whomever it may be. You know what? My dad is good if I call him once a week. Even if I called him once every 2 weeks, he'd be okay. He'd just say, I know you're working, you've got the kids, you have all these things going on. He's not. My mom, Lord. And I love her to death. And I've just had to learn that this is who they are. But she needs a call about every day. And for her, she would like it if it was more than once a day. But for sure, call her in the morning. Good morning, wake up. And that's usually what I do, because I want her to know that I love her. And my dad loves it if I will cook for him. He loves that. If I can say, Dad, I'm making meatloaf, or I've made soup, or I'm going to barbecue for Father's Day. He's happy. We're outside. He's having a good time. He doesn't have to have the phone call every day. I'd probably make him irritated if I called my dad every day. But we're all different. And different is not bad. It's just a matter of learning to appreciate the differences. So yes, I want to highlight that reading good literature to enhance your marriage is great. I'm always going to make it Christian material. Go to workshops, marriage conferences. Too much is not enough. unless you don't put into practice what you're learning. And definitely visit a counselor. To think that you have to be having problems to see a counselor is a real no, because oftentimes they can take a really good love and make it a great love and help bring out some things that maybe aren't a problem per se, but if they were addressed, wow, your relationship would even be healthier, more meaningful, and more satisfying. I was talking about the spiritual component earlier, Christine, and I would also say fast together. Fasting, doing a devotional together, doing a study together is a wonderful way to remain connected because you have an agenda. You are seeking God with a relentless passion that totally kicks it up to another notch, because when you can find someone to fast and pray with, I mean, there aren't many people who are really willing to do that because that is just not a lot of fun. But the effects, it's effective. It is so very effective. So I definitely want to highlight that. And keeping up with yourself. All right, I'm going to step on a little bit of toes here. And I've been guilty of it before, and it's easy to do. But it's real easy to say they should just love me for who I am, forget about how I look. Now, I think that is the biggest blown up lie in the world, and I'm going to tell you why. Not that they shouldn't love you, they should. But for some reason, we seem to think that because we're in a relationship, how we look doesn't matter, and that's not true. Probably how we looked is what helped us to catch the fish to begin with. And it's not that it's all about the looks, but I think in honoring the person that you're with, it's important that you take good care of your body, that you do your best to not overeat all the time, to get some element of exercise and give them someone that is attractive to the best of your ability, whatever that may look like. And for all of us, that's different. But don't be negligent in taking care of yourself, because it's not just about your body. Your body isn't your own. The Word of God tells us that. And so we want to take good care of ourselves to be healthy and to look good for the person that we're with. You know, oftentimes people will, and I don't mean it in a bad way, but oftentimes women, I'm a woman, will let themselves go, and then they wonder why their husband's attracted to the more skinnier woman at the office. Or they don't want to put on their makeup, or they don't want to fix their hair. Then they wonder why their husband turns his head every time somebody pretty walks by. Did God make a mistake when he made men attracted by sight? No, and I'm not going to call it a mistake. But when are we going to try to justify our laziness and being overweight? When are we going to stop trying to justify it and saying men are bad that way? They're not. Just like women are not bad for wanting a connection, but we're not going to call them bad because as a man, you're not willing to stop and take the time to connect, take them on dates, talk with them. Don't get mad when someone else is willing to talk with them about what's happening in their heart. Oftentimes, it's easy to say, well, we live together, we are together, I kind of know what's going on in her life, I don't really need to give of myself that much. But what one person is willing to give up, oftentimes someone else is willing to appreciate. That's not to end the show on a bad note. It's just to say, hey, why would we not be wise? Why would we not want to take care of ourselves and to offer ourselves as a living sacrifice to God? He cares about our body. We are the temple of the Holy Spirit. We want to be effective in the work that He's called us to do. Let's take good care of ourselves so we can live long and be healthy and enjoy our time here on earth and give our sweethearts something to enjoy as well, and give our family and friends someone who will be around for quite some time because we love them enough to take care of ourselves. Well, you've been listening to Matters of the Heart. I'm a counselor. I have a lot of ideas. People pay me for the ideas. And I guess sometimes that can be good, and you can decide if it was good for you today. But I give it all to you in love today. Thanks for listening to the show and for joining my producer, Christine, and I on Matters of the Heart radio show.
You've been listening to Matters of the Heart Radio Live. If you enjoyed listening to the show today, we ask that you support it with your gifts. The show could not be made possible without generous contributions from our community of faithful listeners, and in order to make it possible to remain on the air, we need your help. The show is made possible for you and with you, so please consider making a donation today. Please visit the show's website, mattersoftheheartradio.org, and click the donation button at the bottom of the homepage. Learn about partnership opportunities and corporate sponsorship with us to order a signed copy of Ms. Wendy's book, Healing Waters. To schedule a counseling session with Ms. Wendy, go to refreshingtimescounselingcenter.com. Visit us on Facebook, and please don't forget to tune in next week with Ms. Wendy on Matters of the Heart Radio Live.